This is going to be another Semen Retention Sunday episode that is jam-packed with information from multiple cultures, perspectives, and data points that is going to give you so much information and application tools to apply toward better integrating your anima and for understanding the archetype of the snake woman that you'll meet on Semen Retention. Every man is destined to meet the snake woman at one point or another. Now, how she presents herself is going to be determined by your degree of awareness and conscious effort and devotion toward your awakening process and the individuation process. Firstly, it is important to determine and discuss where the snake archetype and the snake woman archetype came from. Over here on the right-hand side of this presentation, you'll see a sculpture of the snake goddess. And the snake goddess has been around for at least 4,000 years. This source is from the gods and goddesses of old Europe. And this was a book from about 1974 in which goes into a deep dive on all of the gods and goddesses of old Europe and how this snake goddess in particular had no head because she seeks to devour the minds of men. This is very similar and in regard to the Jezebel spirit in goddess form. For those that are unfamiliar with the Jezebel spirit, the Jezebel spirit is a character that is taken from the Bible who was and is the only person in the Bible that had makeup. She was the only one that wore makeup, and she sabotaged her husband's success to kill kings. And this is the exact replica of why we must be very, very discerning in who we let into our life on Semen Retention. The temptation of the snake goddess is real. Now, this does not mean that the snake goddess is true, but it does mean that the encounter with the archetype is going to be something that you cannot deny. Now, this is the symbolism of the snake woman versus the virgin woman. And this is from Psychology and Alchemy by Carl Jung. The original image is from around 1624. And this represents the sea of renewal arising from the virgin's milk. This is a symbolic representation of the unconscious and how the unconscious is ever giving and ever aware of its own being in some way, shape, and form. The snake woman then represents the seductive intelligence tied to instinct and chaos. That is the dragon beneath her. She is sexually aware, psychologically perceptive, emotionally unpredictable, and connected to her instinctual forces. She will do everything she can to ensure that you are in a seductive framework so that she can better control your life force. The virgin woman, however, as an archetype, does not necessarily represent being untouched per se, but it does mean that it is, and she is, an unclaimed and sovereign being or entity. Now, this is, as an archetype, representational of clarity, order, devotion, moral alignment, and spiritual direction. Whereas the snake woman represents the hyper-expressed instinct of a human being, the virgin represents the insightful intuition and purpose of a human being. Therefore, one can gaze upon this image and see the discerning view of how the mother of life, as an archetype, will give from her breast the milk of sustainment and health, while the dragon swims and tries to devour the people all around it. But notice how in the image, the virgin is on top of the dragon. So the dragon of chaos, the snake woman, can be tamed only by the virgin woman in archetypal and symbolic form. So these are going to be new truths about old sexual programs and programming. Semen is symbolically tied to the future of creation, life force allocation, and commitment to long range outcomes. When a man loses control of his energy repeatedly, his timeline is then exposed to the snake woman archetype. Instead of his timeline being future, vision, kingdom, and legacy, it ends up being impulse, release, reset, and repeat. That keeps you on a time loop. The snake woman archetype is going to keep you on a time loop for as long as possible, because if you can be repeated into cycles that feed her energy, then she's going to keep you around, because she cannot generate her own energy. She is not the virgin woman archetype. So then here we have Medusa. This is the image of Medusa. Notice her. This is her after her head has cut off. And this is a design by Francesco Salviati, roughly between 1510 to 1563 AD. And you notice how Medusa is an archetype of the wounded sexual energy and the snake woman. So Medusa represents something internal then, rather than external. Within individuals, the Medusa archetype symbolizes sexual shame, suppressed desire, trauma around intimacy, and defensive sexuality. Therefore, he who is on semen retention must learn to develop his own inner hero to confront the serpent power without becoming enslaved or wounded by its desire to desire. This is here a depiction of Vishnu, seen as the preserver, and is reclining on Shisha as Brahma is borne on a lotus from his navel. This is in the palace of Bursinget Dev Orcha from the early 1600s, roughly speaking. Now, I do not know how to pronounce Bursinget Dev Orcha. However, I hope that I did a justice enough, and I hope that you forgive me for any mispronunciations that I have. But look at the power of this image. Look at the goddess Shisha and the snakes that Vishnu is resting on as that lotus pops out from his belly. This says then that the serpent is the life force that continually renews itself. Vishnu rests on the flow of the cosmic life as the power bursts forth from his bosom. This represents his will, and his will is the thing that refines the life force. His will is the thing that refines the cosmic vitality of life. And in the Bible, the serpent introduces knowledge of good and evil. This demonstrates and leads humanity toward divine awareness. But immortality is withheld. Thus, the serpent becomes associated with hidden wisdom that brings humans closer to godlike awareness. But the serpent, the life force that continually renews itself, cannot truly grant the power of immortality. Thus, the serpent represents the principle of eternalities in of itself. Now, what's so fascinating about this image, if you look here and you see and you zoom in on the image itself, this also could represent that man himself rests on the eternal image and the eternal essence of the feminine spirit. That snakes, there's a wisdom to it, and women have this intuitive faculty that if they are not corrupt, they will be like the virgin symbol and the virgin archetype that represents that life force that continually renews itself with clarity, compassion, and femininity. So this here is an image. You can see right in the top here, this is the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve recognizing their nakedness. And you can see that this is a medieval, from about the 1600s and beforehand. This is a copy of a medieval manuscript that demonstrates how the world really looks. You can see here that there's on the outside of this beautiful piece of artistry, it represents heavenliness. And you can see that there are waters going through around into heaven, representing the firmament, and also that there are waters above and waters below, as you can see here in the rivers of life, mixed with all of these different kinds of structures and buildings. But this is the demonstration of what consciousness really has to go through to develop itself to the fullest. And on semen retention, you're going to have to learn how to integrate these things at a very high level, or you will be consumed by your own nakedness, your own sense of vulnerability. Therefore, the snake woman, society in this case, as a symbol of the society, wants your sexual impulse to be used against you. The snake archetype traditionally represents seduction through perception and instinct, psychological manipulation, and temptation toward immediacy rather than destiny. Sexual impulse is the fastest way to collapse higher order agency into biological reaction, keeping you stuck in what I call zombie programming, because it is like the night of the living dead out here sometimes. You'll look at people and you can see for a fact that they are spiritually dead, but you do not know how and when to wake them up, because sometimes it's not your job to wake them up. It is not your job to save these people. We can do what we can to help people, but if it's going to be a low value, high cost timeline, then that's going to be something that you're going to have to stay away from. And that is exactly what these sexual impulses are designed to keep you in, is a low value, high cost timeline. The cost is your soul. You're renting your soul, and you're renting your sense of being and purity all to the snake woman. And now this is obviously just one archetype and one narrative. There are many ways and many things that you can devote your life force energy to, but for the sake of this topic, we are talking specifically about the snake woman and how she wants your sexual impulse to be used against you. So be mindful, be discerning, and live in the truth, and let die what is false. Now, I hope everybody stays blessed. I hope that you all have a beautiful rest of your day. I wanted to come through with this video because this is going to be really, really jam-packed for people. And I know that there's a lot of information that was just thrown at you. But if you have follow-up questions, if you want to talk about these types of topics with people that are like-minded, that are open to experience, and that are not religionists in any way, shape, or form, then I encourage you to join the Regal Change Academy, or sign up for one of my one-on-one sessions or my Godlike Mastery for those who have the financial and time, the financial means and the time to really commit to this full force transformation process that will take about 3 months, where we go through and I provide a structure for you to explore so that you can develop your godlike sense of mastery. Now, it is also important that when I provide the structure, I am the architect for you. No matter if it's in these videos, no matter if it's in the Regal Change Academy, the RCA, my one-on-ones, whatever the case is, I'm going to be the architect for you. This does not mean that I'm abandoning you. This does not mean that I'm walking away from responsibility. In fact, I am giving you responsibility because I don't want to take your responsibility. I don't need anybody to take my responsibility, and you don't need anybody to take your responsibility. We are done with the psychological manipulation. We are done with the temptation toward immediacy rather than fulfilling that which we want to do. Now, destiny, depending on how you define it, is a tricky thing, but the most important thing to recognize here on the semen retention path is that it is a tool. Semen retention is not to be idolized, because otherwise you will fall into the Medusa trap, and you will have the sexual shame, the suppressed desire, the trauma, and the defensiveness in your sexuality. You must learn how to confront your serpent power without becoming an enemy to it. Otherwise, this is why you have to cut off the head of Medusa. Because if you don't cut off the head of Medusa, so to speak, symbolically speaking, then you're not going to be able to allocate your life force energy appropriately, and you're not going to be able to commit to long range outcomes. So remember, the snake goddess has been around for thousands and thousands of years, and this subtle archetype is seeping into our daily activities and our daily ongoings, no matter what we want to do, no matter what we want to say about it. But this is something that we have to just simply recognize so that we do not get sucked into any form of immediacy. Be mindful, be discerning, and may God be with you all, and may peace be with you all. Till next time, stay blessed, and peace be with you.